What Would Louise Say? Join us every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Mountain Time. Hosted by Reverend Martine Bernard. Explore the wisdom of Louise Hay. Brought to you by New Thought Media Network. Dive into Louise's teachings. Experience healing and empowerment. Reverend Martine shares insights. Connect with a contemporary audience. Unlock your potential. Transform your life with love. Embrace positivity and healing. Join our vibrant community. Ready to join us? Let's spread love and wisdom together. Please like, share, and subscribe. Only on New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring.
Welcome, everyone, from whatever time zone you're in today. My name is Dr. Patricia Crane, and I'm filling in for Reverend Martine while she has another commitment today. She'll be back next week. I studied personally with Louise Hay, and that led to an international training program called Heal Your Life and workshop leaders and coaches. And last year, Reverend Martine happened to come to our training in San Diego. And while there, she got really excited about Louise's work and really bringing forth her wisdom a little bit more in the world. And this broadcast is the result. So we're very, very grateful to her for that vision, and we're participating with her in it. Now, today, my guest is Stef Swink, who is one of my favorite people on the planet. And I'd like to share with you some of her bio and then have her come on and tell you more about herself and her background with Louise's work and all the exciting things she's doing now. Stef is, first of all, a lover of life, all of it. The beautiful, mysterious, heartbreaking, terrifying, and miraculous. She believes that life itself is such a miracle of such proportions that it is your soul's obligation to live it and love it as fully as possible. Now, in the mid-90s, Stef was guided to work with Louise Hay as her personal assistant, and that is a great story you'll want to hear. So she was working with Louise at that time. And as you know, Louise is well known for her book, You Can Heal Your Life, bestseller internationally. But she also wrote a column called Dear Louise, which was in the Science of Mind magazine, and also in columns in Metaphysical. And as Stef was working with her, she began to ask Stef about the Dear Louise letters that she was getting. And so she asked Stef about them and asked her to do a few of them. And Stef actually became her ghostwriter for the Dear Louise column. And that has led to her being asked to do an Ask Stef column, which we'll also talk about a little bit later. Now, during that time, Stef also began studying as a spiritual practitioner with what was then Religious Science, now Centers for Spiritual Living, and she remains active today as a practitioner. Now, when Louise moved to San Diego, which was in the later 90s, Stef ended up working with Hay House in the office for a while, and Rick and I took her away. We got her to work for us as an assistant, and she was incredible as our assistant, very valuable. And I'll tell you, one of the perks was that she got to bring her dog Jasmine to work with her at the ranch we were living at the time. And part of her employee contract was we had to give Jasmine a rawhide bone every week. So we did that. And that was a wonderful time. After a few years, Stef was guided to other life opportunities. And I'm going to tell you a little more about those. So now, what she does, in addition to sharing her heart and wisdom through the Ask Stef column in the Science of Mind magazine, she's currently serving others through spiritual mentoring, nature-focused healing experiences, and other work that she does. She loves working in partnership with the earth and with people who are ready to really honestly look at their lives and also do whatever it takes to make the radical improvements that they need for happiness. Her upcoming upcoming Nurtured by Nature retreat is September 18th to the 21st. We'll be talking more about that. And really, I've known Stef for a long time. She has inspired countless others with her joyous spirit, her wisdom, and her loving energy. So welcome, Stef. I'm so excited to be talking with you today.
Thank you so much, Patricia. It's so good to be with you.
So tell the audience, how did you first find Louise's work?
I have worked on staff on the team at 3 different centers for spiritual living over the years. And the first one was in San Diego, where I'm from. And I think I was on staff. I was the everything girl, doing the announcements and helping with marketing and all of that. And at that time, a friend of mine referred me to her book. And I went straight into the church library and purchased it and all the other books of hers that were available. And, was really moved, started using the principles, and started taking classes at that time that led, ultimately to where I am now.
Oh, that's wonderful. And I also know Reverend Kathy Hearn that you worked with at the San Diego church. She's an amazing woman as well. So tell us about this incredibly serendipitous meeting that you had that led you to Louise. But I want to ask a question first before I get to your story about it. At the time, was there any, I know you might not have been doing an affirmation, but at the time, was there any kind of feeling within you that you wanted more? There was something more that you wanted to be doing? Because what I know is, even though, as you know, I'm such a fan of affirmations, and Louise has been called the queen of affirmations, what's in your heart sometimes is not clearly an affirmation in your head, but your heart is leading you.
Mm-hmm.
So was that going on at the time?
It's interesting because both I've been so blessed to include you in this list of amazing, powerful spiritual women who have been my mentors over the years. So Kathy Hearn inadvertently motivated me to move out of that job. I remember she gave a talk one Sunday. I did the announcements, and she gave a beautiful talk about really living in the fullness of what my most recent mentor terms the fullness of your wholeness. And I knew that there was more. I knew, and I loved what I was doing and all that I was involved with. And I wanted to go deeper. I wanted to express myself personally more in the world in a spiritual way. And so I ended up going with actually a guy that I was dating at the church at the time on a camping trip to Sedona. And he introduced me to his practitioner, who happened to be one of Louise Hay's personal best friends. So getting to know her, she referred, I shared with her about where I was in my life and what I wanted to do. And she said, "You need to connect with Louise. I think she's looking for somebody just like you." And so I did. And she hired me as her personal assistant in her home office, actually, of the county of San Diego. So it's pretty amazing.
And I think that really that story is such a great lesson for the listeners, and people will be watching the recording afterwards, because there's such wonderful, we don't really call them coincidences. We know that we're being guided by spirit, but when you're really just open and your heart is desiring something, it's going to happen. And a miracle like that, going to Sedona, meeting a friend, having all of those things to just find a connection to Louise, I think is so great. So talk a little more about practitioner training, and also you as a practitioner. That's where Louise actually started after she was taking all the courses with Heal Your Life, with Centers for Spiritual Living, called Religious Science back then. And she actually did go through the ministerial program, but she never had her own physical church because her church ended up being the world. But I think the spiritual practitioners with the Centers for Spiritual Living are just so important in helping people really beyond the Sunday work, and the Sunday, services, to really get more in touch with what they need. So talk some more about the practitioner services and what the training was like and what that is for you at this point, because you've been a practitioner for 25 years.
I know.
That's incredible.
Talking to me still. People say, "Oh, you must have been," I say, "I was 12 when I got my license."
That's right. You were 12.
Well, when I was working for Louise, I was her personal assistant. She had another personal assistant also. So I ended up kind of working into that niche of responding to her letters. And so we had a lot of personal interaction as a result of that. She was coaching me and looking over what I was saying, and obviously very involved, especially in the beginning, in what I was writing. And I remember specifically one day, she kind of changed subject midstream when we were talking about one of my responses. And she said, "So what are you going to do?" What are you going to do? What's your path? You're not going to do this for the rest of your life. That conversation ended up inspiring me, putting me over the edge of my wavering a little bit to go into practitioner training. So I was actually in the 2-year program of practitioner training while I was working for her, which was great. And graduated about the same time that I left her and then went to work with you. But the training was so it was so wonderful, and I did it at Kathy Hearn's church. Again, graduated in '99. We had a small group of 12, and the healing, personally and collectively, that took place in those 2 years was totally transformational for me. And I did not at the time really have, well, I'll be blind, I had no confidence at the time that I wanted to be, me. I was young. I was like, what do I know really to sit with people and do individual counseling? I actually tried to get out of it when the first person came to me. And I went to Kathy Hearn and said, I can't do this. And she said, oh, yes, you can. And so what I like to say about my practice and what I know about so many practitioners that serve in such a sacred way like this is that it's really a co-creation. It's a partnership with the infinite, with the divine. And Louise really encouraged me to lean into that too in my writing of the letters and in what ended up being, and I still am very active as a practitioner and mentor for 25 years, working with people individually. And I really trust that impress of that infinite loving wisdom of God, because I might have a few good ideas, but tapping into and co-creating and working in partnership with the infinite and with the wisdom of the earth makes all the difference. So, I love being a practitioner mentor. I'll be that until I'm done here.
Which is wonderful. And I love that you really say it's a sacred process. It's because there's a lot of counseling and stuff out in the world, and that's very valuable when needed. But I also have found with the spiritual, work and the practitioner work, that just to go straight into that spiritual practice in the heart is so important, because I totally agree. You say I could have some ideas in my own head about doing things. And I have to say, quite honestly, as well, with Rick and I and the Heal Your Life trainings, people ask us, well, what was your business plan? We didn't have one. We did what Louise would say is she listened to her people asking her questions and what they needed. She answered her email, her regular mail at the time, and she answered the phone. And that was really such wonderful guidance, because, it's not how we're always figuring things in our own minds.
Right.
If we just stop and let ourselves be guided. And I think just your life and overall what you've gone through in your career is you've continually done that. You've continually just let spirit guide you in the next step and what it is that you're doing. So I just want to say a little bit about you working for us, because that was such a wonderful few years when you were there. And I do remember, now we did have email then. We did have email.
Dating ourselves a little bit. Email was
dating. I know that. But that just shows you how wise we are, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But I do remember what a great job you did every day cleaning out the email, because I'm not very good at that. But also, it was a time when there were lots of phone calls, lots of mailings and things like that. So, you were just a wonderful part of, what we needed absolutely at that time in terms of, of growing the business. And I just want to say how much we enjoyed having you as an assistant. And we also blessed you as it was time for you to go on to your next step.
Yeah.
So I also know that you had done the training with us in 1999. I was telling you earlier, I just found a group photo with all of us actually at Louise's house down in San Diego for that training. But I'd just like you to share a little bit about leading the Heal Your Life workshops and the coaching that you did for those years, and just how gratifying that is to help people through their stuff.
Yeah. I still remember, I think it was you that told me, or maybe you told all of us in the training that, as far as when people sign up, that is when the workshop begins. When someone makes the decision. And I remember getting my first phone call for my first weekend workshop. and saying that to the person. And she said, wow, that's really profound. That's amazing. She ended up bringing like 3 of her friends. Yeah, it was really touched. And that workshop, that first one, it was when I was still working. No, I wasn't. I was practicing. I was a practitioner at Reverend Matthew's church in San Diego, and that's where I held it. And it was huge. There was almost 30 people that came to that. So I was, once again, like I was as a new practitioner, I really had to lean in to trust and faith, and knowing that I wasn't alone in doing that. I wisely got an assistant within that number of people. But witnessing the profound transformational healing experiences that people had in that structure of that 2-day Heal Your Life workshop. Some of the pieces seemed so simple. And even at the time, just even the singing the little song, like we would sing, I love myself the way I am. And I remember my personality going, oh, this is so corny. My personality aside, people had this incredible experience. And one in particular in that workshop I saw years later, who had just been diagnosed with cancer right before she came to the workshop. And I saw her years later. She said that workshop started her journey, and that's why she was still alive on the planet.
Oh, how fabulous.
And so, and I continued to do those workshops until I moved here to Colorado. And they still play a role. Those tools, those simple tools of Louise's that she used to help people get in touch with what was ready to be healed. They still work. They'll always work. And I'm so glad that her influence is still very obvious in the world and in my life.
Oh, that's wonderful. And you're so right. That 2-day workshop and the perfect group is always brought together. I'm sure you noticed that. And sometimes there are different themes that come out in those particular workshops.
Yeah.
But the 2-day workshop, and it's called Love Yourself, Heal Your Life. That is Louise's signature workshop. And during COVID, we really had to make a profound decision because her work is so deep in the 2-day workshop and also in the trainings that we really knew and were guided that it could not be online. So we did adapt some of the other workshops that were a little bit different that are also the, Heal Your Life workshops to be online, but we kept the training and we kept the 2-day workshop in person. And so as of now, there aren't as many 2-day workshops happening, but we'd really like to see a resurgence of that because you're right. Even though the exercises at times seem simple, somehow the accumulation of just the way that Louise put that workshop together is absolutely transformational. People leave transformed like the woman you're talking about, and how wonderful you met her again after a few years and could get that feedback about how much it changed. And I will tell you, we still sing I Love Myself the Way I Am.
I do too. I'm over it now.
And I just Martine just actually interviewed David Alt, who was one of the trio that sang that with Louise, and I have their version up on our YouTube channel. So we still sing that because even if it's corny, people need the message, right? They need the message. I love myself the way I am. There's nothing I need to change. And that is just, so incredibly, incredibly important. Now, Stef, one of the questions that I often get is, what was Louise really like?
Me too.
And so we're going to talk a bit about that and share some of that, maybe a few things that haven't been out there before. But one of the things I would say is that, especially on stage with Louise and with Louise's books and her audios and everything, she is the loving mother we never had, or most of us never had. Now, your mother, I know, shared spiritual principles with you at a young age, and I'm going to ask you about that later too. But she really comes across as, I love you, and it's okay to love yourself. So it's very profound. And when she was on stage, at the I Can Do It conferences with thousands of people, she just really she wasn't an overtly charismatic woman, but you would just hold on to every word she was saying. And people are surprised when I say, well, you know what? Louise was not an extrovert. She may look like it on stage, but she was an introvert. She had a small group of friends and she kept her boundaries. So there were some people who didn't like it when she kept her boundaries because they didn't, they felt like she should be all completely open all the time. But, when you're that well known, you have to be careful. about boundaries and your energy and what you're sharing. So she was an introvert. But I would say, when I was at one of the trainings, or one of the intensives, actually, because I did all those intensives with Louise, I had my back to the door one time, and we were getting ready for the opening session. And I felt this energy coming in. And I turned around, it was Louise. And I could feel that heart energy that was there for those 150 people that were at that program. So she really, from her, science of mind training and her practitioner training, she really could tap into that heart energy. And then other times when she was by herself, I mean, hey, she's a real person, you know. I've seen her get angry, but when she got angry, she generally got over it pretty quickly. So I've seen some different moods with Louise, but always she would come back to that spiritual center with herself. So I know you have a couple of stories, at least one, of working with her and something that happened that really shows her humanity and her ability to process something and then come back to you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That story I've shared, that I'll share now, was really pivotal for me. Um, I was working with her in her home. Somebody called that said it was urgent, and I remember going to tell her, "Hey, there's this urgent phone call," and she was doing something, and she snapped at me. She was a little
Mhm.
abrupt, and I thought, rude, hurt my feelings. I'm a sensitive being,
Yeah.
and I went home and stewed and stewed and stewed. And the next day I came in determined, I'm going to tell her that wasn't okay. And I remember going out, finding her in the garden. And this sounds like I'm so strong and confident, but my knees felt like jello because, she's an absolute force. She's my boss, and Louise Hay. And I shared with her. I said, I need to talk to you. And she said, okay. And she kept gardening. And I said, I need eye contact. And I remember she went, oh, this
You.
and she stood up and she kind of put her hand on her hip and she looked at me and she said yes. And I shared with her that I thought that her treatment of me the day before was a little more abrupt than I felt comfortable with. And I remember saying that, you teach about self-love and respect. And so I'm coming from a place of self-love and respect and asking you to please not speak to me that way again. And she said, okay, I hear you. And she went back to her gardening, which was not really the response I was hoping.
Yeah, I bet.
But I see now that she needed to process it, because when I came in the very next day, there was a card and a little box, a little gift box. Oh, and by the way, I didn't mention that the day before the snarky comment that I talked to her about, I had asked her, also with jelly knees, for a raise. I ask her for a raise, and then I tell her she needs to speak to me differently. This whole almost, I wasn't sleeping. I was a hot mess. But what happened when I went in that morning is she had a card. I opened the card, and she said, I value, love, and appreciate you. You got your raise.
Oh, beautiful.
And in the box was a pin that I still have, of course, of this woman leaping. And I, and it just, that said it all. So, and what I appreciate about that is that I know that interaction probably wasn't the easiest one for her.
Yeah.
For me she knew that it was hard for me as well to say what I did. And there are things that she did, Patricia. I might, maybe in some ways I'm a slow learner, but there are a couple of things that she did for me over the years that I didn't get at the time, that were such gifts of consciousness. And if you don't mind, I'm going to share one more.
Oh, please do. Yeah.
I was thinking about this morning. I was working for her just temporarily. She had moved from the home that I worked with her in, primarily up in Del Mar, and she had moved, and I was very temporarily worked there until she got her new assistant. And she went on a trip. She went on a trip, a river cruise trip.
Oh.
And I remember she left, and I was there in the house by myself working, and she called me. And she said, I need you to go into my office. I said, okay. So I got the phone. I went into her office. She goes, I want you to sit down at my desk. Okay. And open this drawer. And I'm thinking she forgot something. She needs some information. Open this drawer. And she has me pull out the brochure for the trip that she's on. And I'm still waiting. She's asking me for something, going to ask me for something important that she needs. And she said, now reach under the desk and push this button. and there's this button under that. Maybe I've never told you this. It's a great story.
No, I haven't heard this one.
And it lifts the blinds on the window in her office. It's an incredible view. And I could hear her laughing. I said, "Is there something that you need?" And she says, "No, that's it." And but before she hung up, she goes, "I just want you to sit there for a few minutes," she said, "and recognize that this too can be for you."
Oh.
And then she hung up. I mean, she called me from the airport on the way. I mean, and I was so, at the time, I'm so confused, I'm so hot wired to respond to what she needs and help her out.
Right.
And all she wanted to do was give me that experience. And what really blows my mind is that last year, my mother and I went on that same river cruise.
Did you really?
Yes, we did.
Was it in Europe?
Yes.
Oh gosh.
Yes. Yeah, down the Rhine. And I just thought of her when I went. I said, "Lulu, you thank you for teaching me what's possible." And at the time she did that, I didn't think it was possible, but everything. So anyway, thank you. That was she did a few of those things for me just to get me to branch out, and think bigger for myself.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that story, because that is one I have not heard. So I really appreciate hearing that. And also, I think, you're giving really a gift to our listeners and those watching afterwards as well, because you didn't feel completely confident, but you felt like you really had to call her on that particular behavior. And I can understand how, here's this well-known international author that you're talking to and you're working for and thinking, uh-oh, am I going to get fired? But you were really brave with that and courageous. And
uh-oh, your sound went off. I can read your lips, but I can only hear myself. Well, maybe this is break time.
Hi, I'm the producer here. I think what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll get Patricia back. And great interview so far, and we'll experience more of it. This is What Would Louise Say here on your New Thought Media Network.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Kitchener, Unity Spiritual Center Ottawa, Om Center for Spiritual Living, Satya Center, Begin Within Ministries, Center for Spiritual Living North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and the Center for Spiritual Living Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for being part of the New Thought Media Network. Please like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring.
What I can say is, wow, there are so many New Thought celebrities in the room. I am telling you, this is a real family reunion. And if you've never been, believe me when I tell you, you are part of the family. You want to come, you want to learn, you want to be hugged on, you want to be loved on. This is the place to be. So
it's a lot of fun. It's like a family reunion. We get together, we laugh and we cry and we're together and we deepen, and it's a lot of fun.
When I think about all the retreats I've been to, all of the summers I've spent going to many places to get spiritual food, nothing really quite does it the way Anton does. There's a family sense here. You come here and you are surrounded by loved ones.
It's very much like to see you at the Anton Retreat 2025. There are lots of wonderful surprises.
What Would Louise Say? Join us every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Mountain Time. Hosted by Reverend Martine Bernard. Explore the wisdom of Louise Hay.
What I love about Anton is the community. The people. I get to come here every year and pick up right where I left off with so many wonderful soul-centered friends.
This is our first time here, and I can't tell you the joy I've felt listening to the wonderful words of the people who are teaching us and sharing with us.
I've enjoyed every topic that's been talked about, and I've enjoyed the people. They're knowledgeable, they're loving, and it's a great space to spend a few days for yourself and for others.
You feel the love. It is literally palpable.
Hi, I'm Reverend Dr. Jerry Troyer, Board President of the affiliated New Thought Network, Anson, speaking to you live and direct from Unity Village outside of Kansas City. We are a beloved spiritual community, and we'd love to have you join us.
So if you're thinking about it and you'd like to have a deep dive into your own soul and connect with others that are doing the same thing, then you might want to consider coming to the Anton Retreat next year in 2025 here at Unity Village. Peace and blessings to you.
What Would Louise Say? Join us every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Mountain Time. Hosted by Reverend Martine Bernard. Explore the wisdom of Louise Hay. Brought to you by New Thought Media Network. Dive into Louise's teachings. Experience healing and empowerment. Reverend Martine shares insights. Connect with a contemporary audience. Unlock your potential. Transform your life with love. Embrace positivity and healing. Join our vibrant community. Ready to join us? Let's spread love and wisdom together. Please like, share, and subscribe. Only on New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring.
Okay, is my mic working now?
It is. I can hear you.
I don't know what happened, but I'm affirming technology is my friend. Technology is my friend. So, Steph, I want to talk to you or ask you about the Ask Steph column and how that came about. You've been doing that now for 9 years. Okay, I am once again going to, hold up, look. The Science of Mind magazine, your guide for spiritual living. I have been getting this magazine every month for 25 years. So you do the math, you know how many of these I have. And I love the actual physical version of it. You can get the actual online version for just $9.95. So if those of you who are watching and listening, if you haven't got this magazine, I really encourage you to. It's very inexpensive. You've got Steph's column and all kinds of wonderful articles and everything that are in there. But I want you to tell everyone, how did you come about to do the Ask Steph column? Now, we know you were a ghostwriter for Louise, and so a lot of those are actually in her book, Letters to Louise. So that's a physical book I always recommend. But how did that come to be?
It was pretty incredible. Not long after I moved here to Colorado, I was asked to facilitate what's called a Sacred Covenant co-creation process for the publishing team of the magazine. The home office used to be physically located just very close to where I live, and I had befriended many of the people who were involved there at home office and with the magazine. And so that whole process is another wonderful story and teaching that I went into and have used for many years. But while at lunch with the team for that 2-day process that I was in with them, one of them was asking me about how did I come to be the ghostwriter for Louise Hay? Mm-hmm. And before I could even answer, and she said, "And why aren't you writing in the magazine?"
Oh,
excellent question. And I love this too, because Louise was big on affirmations, having them physically in your space. And I had a vision board, literally, where I cut out the letters up in the corner of the vision board that said "Ask Stef column." And I love that because she said to me at lunch, what we want you to write a column, and what would you call it? I said, how about Ask Stef? That's how that came to be. That synchronistic.
Oh my goodness. So over the 9 years, I mean, it's bi-monthly, I think now, but for a while it was monthly. And so you've actually answered many, many letters. Is there one particular kind of theme that comes through in those? I know there are a lot of different ones I've read, but is there one predominant theme that comes through?
I would say the first thing that comes to me when you ask that question is I notice a theme that certainly for me in my responses.
Mm-hmm.
And that it has something to do with personal ownership of the experience. And I find myself that no matter what the circumstances that somebody's struggling with, that there is a way through that will become clearer and easier to navigate if the person takes ownership.
Right.
And part of that, certainly came through my experience with Louise in writing the column when she coached me on it for the first many months. That was a similar theme. It's like, we are not victims.
Right.
And that we can feel victimized by our neighbor or the person at work or the person who left the relationship or what have you. And it's not to negate the difficulty. I find myself speaking to that a lot. Look within, journal, pray, meditate, get support, no matter what the issue is. So that's my answer for now. And I don't know that there's so much of a theme. They come from all over the place and all different subjects, which I love. By the way, I do a shout out for people who are watching this video. I love getting fresh new questions all the time. And so it can be about anything, anything at all. So go to my website, reach out to my email, call me, whatever you need to do. I would love to get some questions from people who are watching this, who are connected to me.
Great, absolutely. And I haven't been watching below, but usually they stream your websites along the bottom. So hopefully that's been happening as well. But it's stefswink.com is the main one. And if you go there, you can actually do the Ask Stef column questions, to ask your question. You can get to her retreat, etc. So, that's an easy one to get to. But I do want to comment on that because I have also noticed in reading your column I don't know if it's been every time for 9 years, but it's been quite a few.
Yeah.
Is that there often is this sense of it's something outside of me that's happening and it's getting me angry or upset or sad or whatever it happens to be. You always do bring it back. And I find for myself that even though a number of the questions that you get may not touch me personally in a particular issue, but there's always some wisdom in your column that I can get. So there's always something beneficial for me. And then at times, yes, there's ones that are really, okay, I'm glad I'm reading this month because it's just what I need. Stef's wisdom is coming through. So I really want to compliment you on, the column because there is such deep wisdom there. And I can tell the spiritual place that you come from when you're doing those. And so is there a particular way that you prepare before you start answering a question?
Well, I would love to say that I go into deep prayer and meditation every time, but that wouldn't be totally true.
Okay, we're going to do honesty here.
Yeah, honesty, very important. But it's similar to the way that I began doing the writing for Louise when I would get her letters. There would be so many ideas and different possible ways to respond to any given question that I would do what I would call just the first draft flow. And I still do it that way. I'll read the question and I do close my eyes and sit and I do ask, even if it's not a long meditation or a deep prayer. I always say, I'm co-creating. Spirit, what will you have me say here? And so I always just let it flow without any concern about punctuation or is this too long? And I just let the first draft flow. And then I'll walk away from it for a day or so and then come back. And new ideas will percolate. Certain things will get tossed out and then it'll come back together. And I have to give a shout out to my husband too, because he is editor supreme.
Is
And
he? Oh, that's
yeah,
great.
he's wonderful, and it's so great to share that with him and he's great with the punctuation and helping me just maybe, I know that I could use AI for this now, but I really prefer to partner with my
Yeah.
husband instead, and he'll help me do a little tweak here or there to help it, and I'm always delighted, like, oh, that flows a little bit better, and then I love every time I don't send it until I love it.
Great. Well, gratitude to your husband, Dan.
Yeah,
wonderful. Anyway,
Yeah.
so, and I just want to say as well, just, to encourage people with reading the column and everything, and just, or even to get the Letters to Louise book, because that has so much richness in it. And as part of the coach training, we actually do a segment on letters. And it's not so much that they would be necessarily doing letters, but it's an exercise to get in touch with how do you respond to an issue that someone has. And one of the things I found in that particular segment of the training is that sometimes they want to throw every technique that Louise has, at people. And I have to say, that's not the purpose of this. The purpose of this is to really feel what it is that the person needs. And sometimes people will follow up. I think you've recommended mirror work in some of your, some of your columns, and there's inner child work, affirmations, of course, always. But there's so many of Louise's techniques, and sometimes it's great to request those or suggest those. And other times, there's just people getting them really in touch with their hearts. So, and there's the website for your retreat that's coming up. So I have one more question, and then we're going to get to your retreats as well. And one of the things that I love in your bio, and this is on your bio on the website and also part of what I read, is when you talk about loving all of life. And I think sometimes people on this spiritual path tend to think that once they get there and they're starting to have wonderful changes and that love for life, that nothing challenging will ever happen again. Right.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
And that's a tough one. And so, I've had some medical challenges in my life. I've had some career challenges. I've had some relationship challenges. I had one divorce, although now Rick and I have been together for 30 years, and I think that's a pretty darn good record.
Yeah.
And still way in love. So that is really a good record, right?
Yeah.
But would you be willing to share just a challenge that happened in your life and how you just used your spiritual work and how you went through it? Because I think people really need the encouragement to say, there's light on the other side.
Yeah.
It's light on the other side when you stay the course and you stay committed to your spiritual work.
Yeah, thank you. The first thought that came to me to answer this question shifted, and that's that intuitive thing that often happens in sessions and when I facilitate, that I trust when it shifts. And I was thinking, what came to me was a walk that I took with the dogs yesterday, and to one of my favorite places. We call it the Watershed nearby. It's absolutely stunning here in the foothills of the Rockies. And there is also beetle kill. Lots of trees are dying right now. And so it's something for me. I want to say this story is about, and as I was walking, I had tears because I know that next year it's going to be even more that these trees will die. And then I was noticing all the living trees and all the beauty. And I said, I can walk in the beauty of life in the face of death. And that chokes me up because I feel that so often, and I actually get quite a few questions written to me about how to walk this dance in the environmental and political climate that we're in now that's so difficult.
Yes.
And so I would say, there's something for me in my own journey about finding a deeper connection to life through walking through the valley of the shadow of death. I lost my first husband to cancer, and that, I didn't think that I could survive that. I mean, just this fear of the utter devastation of losing my beloved or anybody that I loved in a way, that death is so final, it seems, and just inconceivable to me at the time. And in hindsight, I look back, and even though it was incredibly difficult and heartbreaking, and even though I did have my questions question my faith and all the hard work and all the prayers that we did to save him, his healing was not physical, but it was no less profound. And that awakening and that realization that yes, there was death and loss, and I walked through it. I felt it all.
Yeah.
And then when I recentered and found my ground again, I was more alive than I'd ever been before. And I think that faith is something that is something that I tend to teach and use in my forest therapy work as well. Let the earth help us remember that we're connected, and life goes on.
Yeah.
Life goes on even in the face of death.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for Steph. And we weren't as close then as we had been earlier, but we knew North and we knew what you were going through as well. And our hearts really went out to you during that time. And, I think your story is really important because you went through it. You allowed yourself to grieve. You allowed yourself to go through everything you needed to go through to get to the other side of that. And here you are now just giving your gifts again and completely. And that is just absolutely so beautiful. So I think that's just something to encourage people. And I can think of some situations where I had friends who were very spiritual and encountered something difficult. And it just was really hard for them to stay with that spiritual work and say, okay, it doesn't look on the outside like I'm getting the results I want, but there's something I need to go through here. It's just really, it's a powerful process there.
I just want to add there. Sorry for interrupting you, but my now husband Dan went through an incredibly scary, long physical challenge. He was in the hospital for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And I want to say what, in light of what you were just saying, that somebody, that maybe people's practices fall away or their faith wavers. That's when it's important to remember that the whole theory, and not theory, but the reality of oneness, because I was so immersed in the intensity of that experience with Dan. I barely ever left the hospital. I was in every doctor meeting. He says I saved his life. I did catch a few things, but I was not deeply immersed in my spiritual practice. But what I did was I reached out to my community, to my friends, my mentors, my practitioner pals, and I asked them to pray for us, and that carried us through. So just to remember that too, that when life's difficulties might really throw us for a loop, even though you might not be deeply meditating every day, you're still connected. And asking for support, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, and asking for that help is just absolutely so important, so important. And I think one of the questions today is, because of all the chaos that's going on in our country, in our world, etc., what would Louise say? And I will share what I think she would, and then you can as well. But I think Louise would say, stay with your spiritual practice. Focus on what you're grateful for in your own life, and then ask if you're guided to take any kind of action out in your community. There's the old controversy about action versus just sitting and meditating forever. And I think absolutely, to me, it's a combination.
Yeah.
I need that combination. So I think that's what Louise would say. And what would you say?
Just had this image just came to me when you were talking about her. When I worked for her, she had this beautiful garden in her yard. Do you remember that? I mean, it was.
I do, absolutely. I have pictures of it.
I remember thinking at the time that she was kind of crazy, because she was always barefoot when she would be out in her garden. She was maybe not always, but often she was barefoot. And for some reason, that vision just came to me as you were speaking. Say, what would Louise say? She would go outside and ground. Now there's documentaries about it and medical studies about how important it is to take our rubber-soled shoes off and connect with her. She was always, in so many ways, a woman ahead of her time.
Right.
But I would think that she would say, because she actually did say this to me in a different context, that the most important thing that I could do on behalf of others or the world is to love myself and love my life.
Yeah.
And I ended up naming my ministry, my company, my business is Loving Life Services. And she is the inspiration for so much that I've done. When I have a decision to make, or I'm feeling off, what can I do that is a reflection of self-love right now? I take the day off. Do I go outside? Do I go for a hike? Do I take a bath? Call a friend? What is it? But when we're coming from that place, and that's another theme that I hope is coming through my column, and it's certainly a foundation of this retreat that I'm doing, is what do we radically, unapologetically love our lives in the face of all the difficulties that are going on.
Absolutely. That is beautiful. And that segues right into, I know how connected with nature you are, and you live in a gorgeous place. But tell us more about your retreat, what the intention is there, what people can experience, because it really offers an opportunity to get back in touch with nature and what's really important.
You know, the Nurtured by Nature retreat idea downloaded to me when I was on a cross-country journey after my first husband died. And I was in a different set of mountains in the Smokies. And this idea, the whole point of this, and the team that I've gathered with me to do this work, we created a sacred agreement, what we call a covenant, about it before we even began. And I grabbed it right before our session today. And I love that this is the essence of it, that we are inviting people to reconnect to the pure joy of just being alive. And this earth, this planet, nature, knows how to do that with such quickness and clarity and a profound simplicity, that this retreat is an opportunity to step away. We're doing it at an absolutely stunning, gorgeous retreat center in the Rocky Mountains up near Rocky Mountain National Park. It's 3 nights. We're going to do ritual, and we're going to have bonfires, and we're going to unplug and recharge. And that is the whole point of it, is really to give people an opportunity to recalibrate with their true essence. I mean, I believe that what Louise would say is that when we are living in our truth, we are in love with ourselves and with life. And our disconnection from the planet through what's called nature deficit disorder. Nature deficit disorder. I was like, yes, I get that. And the impact that has on us negatively can be turned around so quickly and easily. And so I hope that we still have, I think, 4 spots available now for retreat. It's just next month, but I hope anybody hearing this, watching this video that's inspired will sign up or sign up for our newsletter to hear about the next one, because this is something that will continue.
So the actual website is on your screen, and then stefswink.com has the connection to that and everything else that Stef does. Yeah. I've never heard the nature deficit disorder. Nature deficit disorder, NDD. Okay.
Yep. But we're gonna help people change their experience of that.
Absolutely, and it is such a beautiful experience to be in nature, to be able to meditate, to be with other like-minded people that you can really connect with and share what's in your heart. Yeah, get away from the humdrum and everything that's going on in our lives at home. And it really is important periodically, to take some time away. So I know it's going to be a beautiful retreat.
Thank you.
Along with your wisdom and just the beauty of nature that you're with. So what I would say is thank you so much for this interview, Stef. It's been wonderful to connect with you again. I love you. You, like I said earlier, you're one of my favorite people on the planet. And I think, you've always inspired me in terms of the way you have gone with courage in your life, and then been able to share so much with others and inspire others. So, you are really an amazing, amazing woman in your power. And I just honor you and thank you again for being on the show.
Thank you, Patricia. Thanks for the invitation. I love you so much.
Love you too. Bye-bye.
Blessings.
What Would Louise Say? Join us every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Mountain Time. Hosted by Reverend Martine Bernard. Explore the wisdom of Louise Hay. Brought to you by New Thought Media Network. Dive into Louise's teachings. Experience healing and empowerment. Reverend Martine shares insights. Connect with a contemporary audience. Unlock your potential. Transform your life with love. Embrace positivity and healing. Join our vibrant community. Ready to join us? Let's spread love and wisdom together. Please like, share, and subscribe. Only on New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring.